Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
I'm Levi, Rickert, publisher, editor of Native News Online. In March, the Supreme Court heard a case involving the Navajo Nation and the water rights. Yesterday, on Thursday, the decision came out 5-4 against the Navajo Nation. We wanted to talk about this decision with the new president of the Navajo Nation, Nygren, who is becoming a good friend of Native News Online. And welcome, Mr. President. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Levi. It's always an honor to be on this show with you, and it's an honor that you cover Indian country very thoroughly. So it's good. It's a really good morning here in Window Rock, Arizona.
Yes. And tell us a little bit about the case itself. Why was it filed and what did it involve so that our viewers know what's going on, and then we can talk about the decision.
One of the reasons why the case was filed is just to make sure that we kind of have that treaty responsibilities within the federal government. It was basically trying to keep our federal partners accountable to say, you know what, as a trust responsibility, you need to be there for us to make sure that you continue to help us, assist us in quantifying our water rights. And that was one of the main basis of the case was the government should be involved because a treaty was signed and we got to make sure that the responsibilities are upheld on insisting the Navajo people in securing their water rights, because there's been a long history on this case. I know that Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and some of the other states that are involved, they had a water rights settlement case a few years back. And we were told specifically the Navajo Nation to stay out of this because we are going to work on your water rights a little later. But obviously now that we're in a situation with drought and all sorts of things that are happening in our part of the country, it's put us in a really tough position because these other states that really negotiated their water rights, excluding the Navajo Nation at the time, are now feeling the pressure that why is the Navajo Nation getting involved? Because if you think about it, Arizona, very powerful, California, very powerful, Colorado, and all the states that are involved, they're pretty powerful entities at this moment in time. But we were specifically told, hey, sit on the sidelines, the government will take care of you and we'll settle your water rights down the road. And so at this moment in time, we're having a different type of conversation where now the Supreme Court has come down and said, you know what, Navajo Nation, it's up to you to figure this out. So on our end, it's a little disheartening because we've always assumed that having a treaty and having that responsibility with the federal government, that they're going to constantly try to do their work in good faith to help us secure water rights. But now it's been completely put back on us, which is it just makes the road a lot tougher moving forward. If the decision was the other way around, 5-4 for Navajo, it would have made it easier for us to secure our water rights, secure the water that's needed for the Navajo people. But now the additional barricades have been put in place to make it even more difficult to secure water for people that by the thousands that don't have water. So it's a tough situation for us on the Navajo Nation now. But being Indian people, being Navajo people, I think this isn't the first time we've obstacles that seem impossible have been put in front of us, and we continue to exist and we continue to try to make the best of the situations that we have. And that's one of the things I think about moving forward, is just trying to see the good in this and to try to continue to fight and advocate for water on the Arizona side for my Navajo people.
Yes, and I admire that. Would you say that as one more example of the failure of the U.S. government to fulfill their treaties? I mean, that was my perception after reading that yesterday.
So to me, one of the things I think about is for a long time, so this not only affects the Navajo people, it affects all of Indian country, the decision that happened, because Navajo has always referred to its treaty, because in the United States, there's only a select few of tribes that have treaty rights. And everything after that was either executive order or other types of grantees to make them recognize. But as a nation, as a treaty tribe, we've always referenced that. And for us to have a decision like that, it makes it, I think it's going to make it completely even more difficult for other, even tribes that don't have treaty rights now, executive order treaty, executive order nations or other types of nations that were created. And now you have an agreement that was specifically between the Navajo Nation and the government. And now they're interpreting it in a different manner that doesn't help Navajo people. So that's what I think about. I think that we got to continue to try to fight and advocate, because one of the things I think about in this case was that so there's a history of tribes that have secured their water rights without treaties, and to me, and some of these tribes uh, are, are are very fortunate to secure those water rights without even having a treaty in place. But now tribes that don't have treaties in place and don't have the resources to put up the fight against the United States to secure, whether it's water rights, whether it's land, whether it's sacred sites, or whatever it may be, it makes it even more difficult for them if they don't have dollars to support them, to find lobbyists, to find attorneys, to be able to go through, because going through litigation or any type of court, it costs millions of dollars, and it puts a lot of tribes in tough situations to have that battle. And so that's some of the things I think about, not only for Navajo people, but I think about all of Indian country.
Yes, and what would be the next steps? I mean, who do you actually talk to next? I mean,
so some of the next steps, I think, definitely my hope is that we sit down with the President of the United States, and then we try to work the congressional side of trying to get this adjusted or fixed, because those are two very difficult options, right? We just basically had a case that was heard that was Arizona, United States versus Navajo Nation, and now
yes.
we're trying to get a meeting with the President of the United States and trying to get a meeting with some of the congressional delegations to see if we can actually get this through Congress, and that's a task within itself. And I think that, but what's great about this is there's prime opportunity now to have all of Indian country get united behind the Navajo Nation, because for a long time, a lot of people do look to the Navajo Nation for language, for culture, for pride, for sovereignty. And if you have your big brother or your big sister being pushed around and being beaten up, and you don't want to do that, you want to try to figure out how can we help and advocate on behalf of Navajo as well. So this is a calling to all tribal leaders across the country: is let's get united behind my nation, and let's make sure that we continue to stand on what's right. What's right is making sure that the responsibilities that we have come to accustom between Indian nations and the United States, and to really help one another to be successful. In order to be successful, you need land and water. Without land and water, there's not much anybody can do, unless I don't know where else on earth you can do anything without water. So that's my calling to all my tribal leaders across the country: is, let's find this situation, and let's unite behind it to make sure that we fight and advocate for what's right. And if we can overturn this or make this happen for the Navajo Nation, it'll be a win for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next steps, as you mentioned earlier, so that's two. The third step I think about is the Navajo Nation. We're actually going through the Little Colorado River adjudication, and we're going through that right now in Phoenix, hoping that that goes well. If that doesn't go well, we also are having a settlement negotiation team moving along at the same time. So that's going to be our avenue to secure some water for the Little Colorado River as we're moving along. But excuse me. But as far as other steps moving forward, I think about really developing a robust litigation and water rights team for the Navajo Nation. So that's going to be an ask that I'm going to have with the council, the Navajo Nation Council, to make sure that we work with them and they set aside a good amount of money so we can continue to fight and advocate on behalf of the Navajo Nation, on behalf of all of Indian tribe too, all of Indian nations. And so fortunately, I think as a nation, we've got some resources that we can put into that process. And then the fourth thing I think about is really this is a time and place where Indian nations, tribal nations, Native American nations, the Navajo Nation, we need to make sure that next year, it's election year. It's election year. We got to make sure that we've got to continue to fight and advocate and put people in place that will honor and respect our nations and will honor and respect and be a part of the change that's needed in Indian country for us to continue to be successful. That's what I think about. So those are the four things I think about.
Well, that's great. Now, you mentioned Phoenix. Are you talking about the state of Arizona then when you say Phoenix?
Yeah, the state of Arizona.
Okay. Just to clarify our people across the country. Now, and I don't know exact numbers, but I know we've done reporting through the years on it. But what is it? 30 to 40% of Navajo people do not have access to running water. That's an accurate statement?
Yeah, that is a very accurate statement because I campaigned on basic infrastructure for our people, and the voices are heard. Because one of the things I think about is I represent, having been elected as the youngest president of the Navajo Nation at 35, I truly believe that happened by the people that I spoke to, the people that are in poverty, the people that don't have electricity, the people that don't have running water, the people that are just in tough, difficult situations, and they found hope that as their president, that I will advocate for them because I know what it's like to grow up in poverty. I know what it's like with no running water, no electricity. I know what it's like to being raised by mom battling alcoholism, being between my mom and my grandma and not having a secure place or a home. So having those struggles fuel the way I speak. I try to, anything that I do, I try to recenter myself and rehumble, this is for the people that are in tough situation. In this case, there's 30 to 40% of our Navajo people. And if you think about that in numbers, that could be anywhere between 25,000 to 50,000 Navajo people without water, running water going to their homes. They're still hauling water. They're still drinking out of windmill waters that they shouldn't be drinking out of. They're hauling water from the border towns. I remember growing up, there's gas stations that have little water spigots on the outside, and people still fill up buckets with that 5-gallon buckets in the border towns. And that's what they're surviving on. And so for me to sit back and feel like everything is okay, it's not okay. I got so many people in poverty, and that's been one of my biggest biggest fuel for myself is I think about those people every single day I wake up.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I admire about you and your administration. At Native News Online, our mission basic is real simple: to improve the lives of American Indians and Alaska Natives. And when I go out to make speeches or remarks, I'll say, and who can argue with that? And unfortunately, people haven't taken really light of it. And I took note of Justice Kavanaugh's statement yesterday, basically wanted to wash the United States hands of any obligation to the Navajo Nation, and that as it relates to yesterday's case, or the case that was argued back in March. But what the people help me understand this. Is it lack of running water because of this treaty, or a combination of things like uranium has contaminated certain amounts of water on the Navajo Nation? Is it a combination of things, or can you pinpoint it to one reason?
A good reason is the government has always made it very difficult for us to get the water that we need. There's probably other ways. If we secured a certain amount of dollars, let's say everything went our way the other day, and we're actually good. It looks like it's very great that we're going to get a certain amount, certain hundreds of thousands of acres of water for the Arizona side of the Navajo. Let's say that happened. Mm-hmm. If that actually happened, the Navajo Nation could have got creative and really worked with developers and infrastructure developers and found creative financing to actually bring the infrastructure out to the Navajo Nation, where we could have probably worked that out ourselves. But yesterday's decision basically said, we're washing our hands of this, and you guys figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't help the situation. And so when people say, why isn't that the Navajo Nation is without running water? It's because the government has made it very difficult for us to get water. A good example is we secured the San Juan River water rights, and we've got a ton of water coming through the state of New Mexico on one of our major highways. And one's actually a water line stem is actually going towards the state of, towards Window Rock. But you know what's crazy about that? We can't extend into Arizona until our Arizona water rights are settled.
Wow.
So we've got about 6,000 acre feet of water that we could bring into Window Rock, but we can't because our water rights are not settled in Arizona. So that's where that's where I'm like, well, make it easier on us. Don't just say Navajo can't do it, or you're incapable of not doing this. Well, we are capable of doing it, but it's just the rules that are set and in place don't make it easy for us to develop and bring water to the Navajo people.
Mm-hmm. That's sad, and I know that you've been, because I watched some of the coverage, and you've met with the governor of Arizona since you've been in office since January, and I know you've met with the governor of New Mexico. What the relationship with them? Is there a way all three of you three individuals could sit down and say, "Hey, let's just settle this"? I mean, this impacts the lives of people, and that's the. I know things are a lot simpler than sometimes you can say, well, there's a simple solution, but just sitting down talking about it would seem to me to be a great step.
And I think that's one of the discussions that we're going to work on moving forward, is that if we were able to secure water rights in New Mexico, and in Utah, we should be able to do that in Arizona. So we'll definitely look into those avenues of bringing all three governors together to figure out, these are Arizona citizens. I'm happy that the New Mexico citizens now have some claim to some water. Utah citizens have some claim to the water, but now it's time for Arizona to help us. So I'll definitely be reaching out to the leadership and the governor's level, because I know those have to happen, because I know that's where we got to do that, because and that's where I mentioned, I'm just like, we need leaders that care about poor people and poor people in tough situations. And in order for us to stand up on our own, we got to have our own basic necessities. And that's what I have really advocated on, is if we're going to go back to the time of a strong Navajo Nation, a strong Indian country, we got to make sure that we have control of the basic things that make life sustainable. And water is one of them.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I was, as you were talking, Mr. President, I was thinking that, and regardless of color of people's skin, there are rural areas here in Michigan that have very, very poor counties, but they can always track it right back to lack of infrastructure. So the idea that you ran on that infrastructure is, to me, very strong. You ran on a strong platform, and but it sounds like you have a lot of untying of hands on some of this stuff to even accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, and we'll help you get that to your people so they know why it might be taking longer than you thought. But things do take time, and we do know that. But I really do admire what you're doing. And do you have any last thoughts you want to leave to our viewers?
I just want to, I think that's where, to all our viewers and all of our people out in Indian country, as a tribal leader, as the president of the largest land base in the country, and just the uniqueness of leading the Navajo Nation, I ask that you continue to support us, continue my leadership, continue to support the Navajo Nation Council's leadership, to make sure that we're every single day we're fighting for sovereignty, right? Fighting for self-determination, and that's every single day. I always continue to ask that we stand behind leaders that will protect tribal sovereignty, will protect tribal nations that want to determine their own future. And that's what I ask and I plea with our leaders, is that our ancestors, our past leaders, they fought for Indian rights, they fought for citizenship, they fought for ICWA, they fought for all these things so that we could have a say at the table. So let's always make sure that we always help one another, support one another, to make sure that we increase tribal sovereignty and tribal self-determination at every level. So that's what I ask and I plead to all the listeners out there. And let's unite as tribal nations, that we're all unique, we're all different, but what makes us all unite behind something is that we're all Indian people. We all want to be successful. We all want to help our people at the basic level. And we also want to determine our own futures too. So that's what I ask. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to say a few words on this great show, and looking forward to future discussions about this. So yeah.
Chimigwich, and to our viewers, Chimigwich, thank you for tuning into another edition. And this was actually a special one, this extra episode of Native Bidaské, because the decision that came down on Thursday was just so significant. And the president's right. We all need to be united and work very, very hard to fight for Native American Indian rights across Indian country. So have a safe week. Summer has begun and we're all happy about that, but please be safe. Things do happen during the summertime. So please be safe. We'll see you next week.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chimi Gwech.